Hey, Sox fans, welcome back to Good Guys Talk Back. This is episode 242. Hey, I'm Nick Murawski. This is a fan-centric Chicago White Sox and Kansas City Royals podcast today. You'll love to hear that. We do this weekly on Sunday nights on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, pass it along to other Sox fans or Royals fans in your life. You can find the audio absolutely everywhere. With me, as always, my very good friend, lifelong Sox fan, Mr. Pat Hester. Hello, sir.
Hey, Nick. It reminds me of when I was in high school. I went to the great Joliet West High School.
Yeah, Steelman,
and
right?
when I was in high school, they joined Joliet West and Joliet Central, and we just had one sports team. Well, we had one football team, one basketball team. Then we just conjoined, right? Like conjoined twins almost. We went from being the Joliet West Tigers to being the Joliet Steelmen. Just got rid of the Tigers altogether. We weren't the Tigers anymore. If you want to try out, you were competing against kids from the other school. You were just with one team, right? That's maybe what we should do. You just go to the Manford Man and say, listen, let's just conjoin these teams into one super team. Yep. And we can be the Chicago Royals, and that's all. Let's just get it done. Let's just make that motion tonight and make it happen.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. It's like, why not? Let's all get a petition going. Let's just do it already. Rip the Band-Aid off instead of letting this drag through the off season. Get the two teams together, create one super city super team with tons of barbecue. Maybe the Sox will adopt a team Hall of Fame in the left field, which maybe next episode we could bring to the table our nominees for the first induction into the White Sox team Hall of Fame, because it's going that direction if they're bringing all Royal stuff over, which I don't have a problem with. But yeah, it's executives, it's managers. There's been a handful of players that have worn a Royals jersey, a White Sox jersey, some recently. And we've got Benintendi. He came over in the off season. That was the big ticket item. Had some experience in a KC Royals uniform.
I like how you say that. The big ticket item. Yeah. Hold on to your hats.
Exactly.
Here comes Andrew Benintendi, which we liked at the time, right? When it happened, you go, oh, okay. You're solidifying with an actual outfielder. Okay. Show me a little bit more and we'll get excited. And that was it.
Yeah. Well, and I had a feeling that they might have said something to Pedro Grifol. Maybe they said, hey, or maybe it was Kenny, and Kenny said, don't tell Rick I'm saying this to you. Okay. And then maybe Rick came to Pedro and was like, Kenny does not need to know this. This is just between me and you. And they're like, pick a couple guys, pick a couple people maybe on your wish list during free agency. And I thought, it made sense. I would have liked a different outfielder, but it made sense to me because Grifol, I know Andrew Benintendi. I know what he might bring. We need a left fielder, a lefty bat. Of course, the hand injury stuff was a problem, and I think continued during the season. But the one that was it ended up being extremely confusing. But another, I think, a wish list item for Pedro Grifol was Hanser Alberto. I've seen him in a Royals uniform. I gotta get.
Oh, are we going to talk about Hanser Alberto tonight, Nick? No, I didn't know if I was prepared for that.
I gotta get my hands in some Hanser Alberto. He's got to be on this team.
Who doesn't?
He was the king of the Cactus League. He had a great spring. I felt like, okay, this makes sense. He knows Hanser Alberto. They've got a relationship that went horribly wrong. And so, we start off this episode here with, and I've heard these rumors. You've heard these rumors, but it's when it gets stronger like this, you just know it's happening. You just know this is where it's headed. We just need the whisperer Nightingale to put something out, and then it's a sealed deal. But I saw this on the Score. I know a lot of people they've talked about it. We're going to rip through as much as we can here in this episode. But the White Sox are eyeing pursuits of Salvador Perez and Whit Merrifield of this offseason, sources say, and that was from the Score 670. So just initial reactions, Pat, from this recent rumor, and maybe just how has this been sitting with you, Perez? And let's go with Perez first, because Merrifield has been talked about a little bit in the past, but now it's coming on strong again.
Well, Salvador Perez, by a lot of metrics, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've looked at all of them, but from what I understand and what I've heard, is considered one of the worst defensive catchers in all of baseball, right? And by all means, no spring chicken. Didn't we just go through a couple of years of a terrible defensive catcher that is no spring chicken, that can't really move around behind the plate anymore? Okay, yeah, that's true. And his diminishing returns in terms of what he could provide offensively was putrid by the end. Now, Salvador Perez can still put a charge in, can still put a ball in the seats, that's for sure. I'm sure he can still do that for another maybe 1 or 2 years. But I don't know that you'd have to trade for Salvador Perez, correct?
Correct.
There's not
a lot of money involved in that.
This isn't a free agency type of situation. I don't know why you'd want to give up any assets for a Salvador Perez. If you need, I'm assuming you want him because of what he brings in terms of leadership, which you could talk me into a little bit. If you have a team that's deprived, as we are, in terms of who is a leader on this team, who can we turn to? If you could say, well, those things could be solved with Salvador Perez, I suppose you could talk me into that. I just don't like giving up assets to get that in terms of diminishing returns on a player. I'd rather just, he's not going to do this, but if he's that great, once he retires, have him come onto your coaching staff at some point. I don't know. Is that crazy for me to think that? I don't think we're a Salvador Perez away from contending.
We're not. And that's a whole nother, that's a different tangent. Are the Sox really serious in 2024? Of course, there was all that lip service in September when especially when Getz came on board and Grifol was beating that drum of we're going to contend in 2024, blah, blah, blah. That died down quite a bit. And I think someone might have whispered something to Grifol like, hey, guy, stop already with all of that. I know you're trying to drum up some things. We appreciate it, but we got to do this deep dive first. This whole deep dive needs to be done, and Getz talked about that. So, if they look themselves in the mirror, they're not going to be serious contenders, even for the division in 2024. You have so many question marks in the pitching staff, the bullpen. You've got to still figure out other positions, key positions like second base and right field, which could be a Merrifield, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the Perez thing, do you want to hear the quote, the stuff that he has said about Pedro Grifol, or do you want me to get into some? Trying to maybe sell you on some of the numbers or maybe some of the positives. I don't know.
Sure.
Okay. So when Pedro Grifol was hired in November 2022, a very confusing, interesting hire, to say the least. Salvador Perez came out and said a bunch of different things about Pedro Grifol in support that he finally got a managerial job. So a lot of different things. So I'll jump in here. This is Salvador Perez. I'm here because the way Pedro helped me and the way he talked to me and the relationship I have with him, he always taught me the right way. Today, I can say he helped me a lot. I've got 5 gold gloves, and I think 4 of them are because of Pedro, the way he kind of worked with me, the way he always was talking to me, like keeping your head in the game situations, staying on top of it, even in the offseason. He meant a lot to me. I appreciate him for a lot of things. When I got the opportunity to meet Pedro for the first time, after that, he's been kind of my dad. Perez said he's helped me with anything. So that's kind of our relationship. Pedro has always said, good players make good coaches. He always told me that, but I think it's the opposite. Perez said, I think
Hmm.
good coaches
Hmm.
make good players, and he's the best. That is
Oh,
not. That is,
oh.
that is. Don't get that. That's don't be confusing that with a Pedro Grifol quote of the week. I still have that later
Oh,
in the
thank
show. That's
goodness.
more of the Perez quote of the week. So that's a lot there. Okay, gushing over a guy like Pedro Grifol. Now, I have no doubt in my mind Pedro Grifol went to Getz or somebody and said, I need some of my guys. I need more of my guys. I need people that can help me with leadership, with culture, whatever, which is troubling that, of course, Pedro Grifol can't do this as the manager. That's where it should be at. So you're going to try to bring in Salvador Perez, which they have a strong relationship, a father-son like relationship. And, you're going to get a guy maybe that, multiple all-star appearances, World Series, can play some first base, DH, catcher, of course,
Oh,
not
good,
as
because we don't have enough of those.
enough of those
Goodness
hybrid
gracious.
clubs in your bag.
We need those guys.
Yeah. He had some pop in his bat. I mean, 23 home runs last year, but for the White Sox, that's like, whoa, wow, you'd
Yeah.
be right up there. But I mean, when you put it in comparison, you're not getting too excited about that. Not too many years removed from close to 50, if I am remembering correctly, but I don't think we're going to see that from him anytime soon again. And of course, the Grifol connection. So that's why you're hearing this, because that's the pitch that Grifol probably gave to management, and Getz is familiar with Salvador Perez. But I echo all of the downsides that you have. The age, the defensive liability. It's not a long-term solution. So if you're really going to go that route, and not to mention the expense and how much money, and because I don't think the Royals are going to eat a lot of that contract, and what are you going to be giving up? You're basically saying, look, 2024 is not our year. And I don't even know if 2025 is our year, but we're going to get somebody in here until we can really figure out the catcher position that can work really well, that can be, a commander out there that Grifol completely trusts. He needs that because he has no idea what he's doing otherwise. So that's your Salvador Perez pitch.
Yeah, and I don't know why the Royals, from their standpoint, they're going to be asking for a premium, right? You're trading within division. You're going to want to take the White Sox to task and whatever they have. Now, we know that this the system that we have is not ranked very highly. It's probably in the 20s, in the mid 20s in terms of where they're at in terms of their farm system, if I'm not mistaken. So you're going to trade off of that some top players to get a Salvador Perez. I'm just guessing, right? I don't think the Royals are going to go on the cheap for a team within their division, even though we're pushing for them to become one super team. I don't think they're going to let the Sox off the hook and just take take Salvador Perez for a song, right? So it just to me it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but then again, we are fans of the Chicago White Sox, Nick. So not a lot of things have made sense over our lifetime.
This need, this penchant, this crutch to have to continually rip from the Royals
Mhm.
because that's where Getz is comfortable. That's where a lot of the coaches and now some of the executives and Pedro Grifol. You had mentioned it to me just as we were kind of texting this past week, which is spot on. It's lazy.
Yeah.
It's flat out lazy. You're just so comfortable, take a risk. And that has been the Jerry way, right? Is
Mhm.
I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to go anybody out of the organization, get anybody that really knows what's going on here. That's of course going to cost some money because they're going to want to bring in some other smart people that I'm not familiar with. And no. I need to keep things really, really tight. I need to keep it really close. And that's the way Getz and Grifol seem to be going. So yeah, a comment about Perez with his experience in right field. He doesn't have experience in right field, but you know what? The White Sox will probably try to make him a right fielder. You know what, Salvi? we're bullish on your abilities to possibly learn that position. And
Without a Daryl
you know,
Boston though to mold
that's
him
true.
there. I mean,
That's
really,
true. Oh,
it'd be really, a fait
great point.
accompli, just terrible
Great
opportunity.
point.
So
Without the unbelievable outfield leadership and coaching of a Daryl Boston, there's no way Salvador Perez could figure that
it's
position
too
out
late.
without
He's a year late.
he's a year late. Oh man, excellent point. So here's your free agent catcher. So if you're thinking, well, maybe the Sox will upgrade, they'll throw some money at somebody. If you're not in love with,
Hold on.
sorry, I know. I just said,
Oh, Nick,
I just heard myself too. Yep,
maybe
and
the
that was,
Sox will throw money at
yeah.
something. Go
I
ahead.
just
I didn't
heard
mean
it
to
too.
derail your thought.
So Gary Sanchez
Mhm.
could be available. 31 years old, 3.0 WAR. What is it? Of course, good for Mitch Garver, Victor Carantini, Jan Gomes. There's a club option for Jan. Hey, old friend Omar Narvaez might be available. You can grab him. Uh, Austin Hedges. Then I go down the line to Yasmani Grandal. 35 years old. Might maybe you just bring Yasmani Grandal back and then do one of those moves. So there's not a lot available, okay, in free agency. So maybe there's a trade, and that trade very well could be Salvador Perez.
Well, somebody's got to catch, Nick. I mean, you can't just throw it to the backstop, I suppose. So somebody has to be back there. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Again, I would rather, I'd rather go into the season with whatever the hell they have in the system and with Corey Lee and just say, F it, because I just can't see giving up assets for any of those guys, right? You're talking about free agency, right? You just rattle off a bunch of free agents. I guess you bring in one of those guys on somewhat of a cost efficient deal to be your catcher, or you're 60% of the time, 70% of the time catcher. I guess that's okay. None of that screams like go for it, right? It's his new talk. He's called Go For It. Remember that? It was Pat Foley.
Yeah, of course. He's been down in the basement for
Motivational
3
speaker.
hours or 8 hours drinking
He's got a new
coffee.
message.
Yeah.
It's called Go For It.
It's called Go For It. And the Sox aren't going to be going for it, because they're going to pitch you the core. Like, we still have this core. We still rely on this core. We
Mhm.
still are confident in this core. And that's the core offensively and of course defensively out there, position players. But where are your pitchers at? What's your starting rotation going to look like? Where's your depth there?
Yeah.
What's the bullpen going to look like?
I wonder though, Nick, you talk about the core and what is it good for as well. And you talk about Yasmani Grandal, not coming back to this team. His deal is up. He's a free agent. I would be shocked if there was any scenario in which they, would go back and re-sign him or bring him back. That would be crazy time for me. I don't get the feeling that he was well liked in that clubhouse for whatever reason. The whole thing with Tim Anderson, and maybe it was a Tim thing. There was talks about him not doing great with the pitching staff. I wonder if some of these subtractions from the quote unquote core could ultimately spurn, into a positive in the future. Maybe some of these bad apples that are out or on their way out, maybe that makes us better as a group. Maybe that galvanizes this team. So that'll be interesting to see. Oh, Zach Collins.
I know. I was with you. I was listening. And I saw,
please, you now have to do like 10 push-ups for bringing up Zach Collins.
I regurgitated. I had a little throw up in my mouth from Zach Collins.
Zach Collins, I can get to the warning track power. Zach Collins.
Zach Collins needs to become a Royal first. They need to pick him up for just a minute, just a cup of coffee. And then the Sox like, yeah, I think we should probably revisit it. Yep. We definitely need to revisit this one now. Look what the Royals obviously saw something in Zach Collins. We should definitely take another look at him. Again, again, even with the division, even with the AL Central, all this other stuff, that's what makes this so laughable about competing. We're going to be right back in there in 2024. Just not when you look at all this stuff that's going on in terms of, the needs, not only the needs that you've always needed, but now the new needs, just to not only just keep up with Minnesota, but to leap that. I don't see how that's going to happen. And then there's
Speaking
some
of
major
Minnesota, did you
decisions.
take
Yeah.
any joy in Minnesota exiting the
Did I take any
playoffs?
joy? I took
Yeah,
immense amount of
yeah.
joy.
Were you Are you in the side of rooting for Houston as we stand? They are
Absolutely
down two
not.
nothing as we speak, but
Absolutely not. It was good to see Jose Abreu knock a few out of the ballpark to help the cause and get rid of the Twins. And hey, I always have a special place in my heart, always, for Jose Abreu. Wish him well. A little salty how things ended in a White Sox uniform last year. But I want to see the Rangers. I cannot root for the Houston Astros.
okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you. Just
No. Are you on the Houston train? Are you
I'm not really on a
okay?
Houston train. It wouldn't bother me to see Jose Abreu win and be successful, but
But
I'm not.
everybody else then from Houston has to also win. It's not like
I
Jose just
understand
goes
that.
and
I'm
advances and
aware.
plays.
I'm
Are you
aware.
aware of
Thank
that
you. I'm
concept?
aware how the sport works. Thank you.
Okay, well, there's been a lot of changes since the
I
last,
know the rules have
strike.
changed. It's
There's been,
hard to keep up with everything, the shifts and not being allowed, and
yeah. You,
the
you
pitch
thought
clock.
maybe you thought that the team had an option of we're just going to
We'd
have
like to
one
send
player
this one
advance.
man along if that's okay.
It's
This will
okay
be
if you thought
interesting.
that. It is fine. Yeah, go Rangers for sure. So let's visit this Whit Merrifield situation here.
Hmm.
So, $18 million option here, a $500,000 buyout. If I did that research correct, he's got some speed, he's got some durability, something that Chris Getz talked about, which is another thing with Salvi Perez. If you want to be athletic and you want some speed, I don't know if Salvi, checks those boxes anymore. But Merrifield, okay, he's got some speed. He plays a lot of games, all-star last season. Obviously familiar with Grifol. That's a biggie. Second base, left field, right field. 35 years old, I believe, when the season starts. So again, I would say that they're more welcoming second base free agents than opposed to what the catcher situation. But Whit Merrifield, that's someone that I was a little intrigued about maybe a few years ago, of like, okay, this will answer some things. But I don't know. If it's just for that that reason to, like, we've got to get back to where we're comfortable. We know Whit Merrifield, and that's only the way we can operate, is by bringing in people that we know. I don't know. I think I could stomach the Whit Merrifield way more than a Salvi Perez.
Yeah, I could too, because that actually fills probably a larger need. A guy that, at 11 home runs last year at second base, in the 270s in terms of average, is probably going to provide you a lot more on a day in and day out basis than Salvador Perez with diminishing returns behind the plate. And you know how the catchers in terms of their bodies hold up after so long. So I'm okay. I'm a little bit okay with that. You can the tongue in cheek and laughing aside about him being a former Royal. I think that one's more about it's just happenstance. If you're just looking at Whit Merrifield as a guy and a guy to fill a need, I think that's okay. Again, it doesn't scream let's go for it. Let's go win the division. You're not signing the highest paid, best second baseman in the league in terms of who's on the free agent market, which this free agent class isn't all that
It's not that
spectacular
great. No.
anyway. Um, but again, that's a move that you make, Nick, in my opinion. That's like, okay, we've got just about everything covered. We kind of need a second baseman. We don't really have something in the system. But this will really kind of solidify us from a brick and mortar standpoint, right? We need guys to fill out the roster, and we need solid defensive players that are pros, right? We need pros. Okay. That's a move you make, in my opinion, when you're at or ready to take over the division. The move for this is like, okay, that's great, but how much further can that get you? Is that going to get you? How many more wins is that going to get a 61 win team? Right? Is that
Yeah.
going to all of a sudden turn you from 40 games under to 10 over? Is it a 50 swing type of move? No, it's not. It's really not. So
Yeah.
I understand it, and I can get behind it a little bit more than the Salvador Perez and giving up assets to get a guy. But again, it doesn't really, it's not going to excite me. What does excite me is watching the Philadelphia Phillies with 3 guys that I wish the Sox had actually gotten, and watching a guy and listening to him in press conferences, Bryce Harper. That's the leadership, and that's the type of player that this fan base would have just been, salivating over for years, and would have overcome a lot of the crap that we've seen, and be able to take guys, by the back of the neck and say, follow me, and we're going to win. Right. Those are the guys you invest in. And you look at what he's been able to do in big situations and spotlight situations, and you just go, oh man, we really effed that up a long time ago. So this move in a Whit Merrifield doesn't provide that. But moves like that are now gone and you can never get it back are the ones that really make a difference in your organization.
It is just an absolute shame that Bryce Harper never put on a Royals uniform. I mean, that would have been a done deal. They would have locked that up. It would have been all over.
Well, if Kenny was here, we'd get Bryce Harper when he's about 45. We finally got him.
Yeah, we found at the deadline for we're 12 games under, and we're gonna make one more push here. And 45-year-old Bryce, he's gonna do it. Second base free agents, like you had mentioned, pretty thin. Elvis Andrus.
Good. Yep.
Bringing back Elvis Andrus.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Jorge Polanco.
We have your resume on file. We appreciate it.
We're well aware of your skills. Tony Kemp, Colton Wong, Adam Frazier, 2 guys right there that have been rumored to the White Sox for several seasons. Wong and Frazier. Jonathan Scope. He was somebody that I think we were all interested in. Getting him. I mean, he always was hurting the White Sox. Josh Harrison, bring back Josh Harrison.
Can't stay on his feet. Josh Harrison, always
around there,
sliding and all over the
sliding
place.
over there at second. And these last 2 names are outstanding. Hanser Alberto, he's out there and available. Okay. And
surprising.
Pat, at 33 years old, a minus 1.1 WAR. The legend, Lurie Garcia, is out there.
Boy, well, so that any of those would just be, fantastic. Would you rather Would you rather have Josh Harrison or Lurie Garcia?
I would rather have Josh Harrison.
Okay.
Yeah. I just can't revisit it. I can't revisit the
can't go
legend.
Back to the well.
Can't go back to that. I can't see any more highlights of the home run. I was there. I was there in Game 3. You were there. It was a wonderful night. It was a moment. It sure was a moment. Should have had a lot more of those moments. But that is where we are. And if we have time, we'll talk a little anniversary, because there's some interesting anniversaries in White Sox fandom that are should be celebrated. But that's what we have as Sox fans. So I'm nothing against, reliving some of those videos and everything, but I can't go back to the but the Sox will. I'm sure they'll kick the tires on that. They'll do a deep dive and see if maybe he's an opportunity. So I still subscribe to The Athletic. I don't know why, but there's still articles that come that, just baseball in general. Jim Bowden had an article this past week ranking the 18 teams that did not make the postseason. Okay, out of the 18 teams, he put the White Sox at 15. And this is
there's 3 teams worse.
I know.
How in the world is that possible? Who was it? Oakland? Who were the
Royals,
3 teams worse?
I think the Royals.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
I think Colorado might have been worse as well.
We are in fantastic company. Awesome.
So this was the blurb here. The White Sox fired their top baseball execs, Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn, and replaced them with incoming GM Chris Getz. He is expected to be aggressive this offseason in
Be aggressive.
rebuilding
Be aggressive.
the
Okay.
major league team, and has already told his peers and other front offices that there are no untouchables on the roster,
Mm.
although it's unlikely he'd consider moving Robert Jr. The White Sox are hoping to get I love this line. The White Sox are hoping to get more out of Eloy Jimenez, Yohan Moncada, and Andrew Vaughn next year, and want to focus on improving the team's defense and clubhouse culture. They also must significantly improve the rotation before they can contend again. So, going back to what we discussed at the top of this episode, it's no surprise to any Sox fan that's been paying attention. This is we're on the cusp here of a rebuild and remodel, retool, whatever. But in terms of contention in 2024, that's not a focus. It's getting things right, and I would agree. Clubhouse culture and all that other stuff. That not even just talent, but all those other things that they're trying to mitigate. Man, that's a lot. That's a lot on Getz's plate.
I mean, you subscribe to them, and the Athletic always puts out great stuff. Okay, I'm not a subscriber, but you are, thank God, because you read all this stuff for me, and I appreciate that. It's a really one-way relationship here in the terms of the reading for this show. So I appreciate what you do.
That's a good way of saying it. Yeah.
But really, all they had to do was take whatever they wrote last year and edit out and just put in. They got rid of Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn, and just put the same thing. And they did it the same thing from the year before. We need to get more out of this guy, and this guy, and culture and clubhouse and da da da. Boom. Every year, you can just do the same thing. Just keep it on file. Make sure you put it on not on a floppy disk, because that's a little bit old, but put it on a thumb drive or what have you, and just put it in next year and go backspace, and then you put it. Chris Getz is going to have to get more out of you on Moncada.
Not only are you trying to put it on a floppy disk, but the noises that you made for your computer, I'm worried about what kind of device you're using. If it's making those noises, yeah. But that's how long this has been going on. It's just copy paste, change the date, change the year, and just print it, because this is what has been going on with this team over and over.
Who the hell is anybody fooling? Like, I'm sure there's fans. Like, if we read something about a team that we don't follow every day, and you go, oh, it seems like the Rockies are really going to be going for it this year. They have a new GM, and they're going to get more out of this guy, and maybe they're going to do something different with Chris Bryant. I don't even know if he's still playing these days, but you could read all that as a fan of not a fan of the team, and you go, oh, okay, you could kind of be brought into the Rockies are really going to do some things this year. It looks like they have a plan, and they've alerted people. We're telling the rest of the league that we're going to be aggressive and nobody's untouchable. Man, that sounds amazing. But we know we're not fooled. You and I are not going to be fooled anymore by what we see or what we hear. It's really just going to be about reacting to what we see on a day in, day out basis, not all the crap that goes into the off season. But we'll get caught up into it, and we'll have something to talk about this winter. But it's just amazing. There's no news there to me.
Yeah, I mean, the untouchable stuff, we've been hearing it for a while. The aggressive in free agents or this off season, I don't see it. And I think that could be a difference of opinion. Like, what do they mean by aggressive? Are they going to gobble up, take flyers on a bunch of different reclamation projects? And wow, we were really aggressive. I think we can really turn some of these arms into something for our bullpen. And, we got Bannister and Katz working in shifts in the lab. They're going to get these guys right. We have been aggressive. Where to you and me and to a bunch of other diehard Sox fans is like, no, that's not what we want.
Well, you see, this is the perfect year. This is the perfect off-season type of year for the White Sox, though, because there aren't any big fish. So you don't have to be, fooled in the fact that they're actually going to play in this big pool of other teams and have to pay people. It's going to be a lot of people. You're going to overpay always for free agents, but you've got a lot of money coming off the books, this year, and guys that aren't returning. So you can be deceived in a lot of activity that you're going to be paying a lot of money for guys that aren't going to be as good, but it'll look as though they were aggressive in free agency because they're going to have to be in order to fill holes because they aren't coming from the system, right? So do you understand what I'm saying? Like it's not a
Yeah.
year in which there's like 5 or 6 guys or 10 guys and it's like, okay, a lot of teams are going to be going after, there's going to be a lot of money and a lot of aggressive moves to be made, and the market's going to be set and all this other crap that we'd have to hear about. It's a lot of just, it's not a flashy year in terms of free agents. So the Sox are going to make probably several moves, and it's going to be a lot of activity, overpaying for a lot of guys that probably don't deserve that money, but you have to in free agency. And then it'll be spun in, we were aggressive and we spent money this offseason. That's how it'll be spun.
Yeah. There are some arms out there, though, that I am intrigued by, that I wish they would invest in pitching. There's some pitching availability in free agency that's kind of exciting, and I can go over that in a second. I was reading something from Scott Greger. He writes for the Daily Herald. I think he's the longest tenured White Sox beat reporter. I think he's got Merkin by maybe a couple of years, I think. Scott Greger came on the podcast a few years ago.
Yep.
And gave us some of his time. And I followed what he has been writing for a long time. And he wrote something, kind of an op-ed of 5 pieces of advice for Getz. One of his points was to keep Anderson. He said Getz should give him one more season, and number 1 prospect Colson Montgomery will be ready to take over at shortstop after that. And Colson Montgomery has been, exciting some folks out there in the desert with what he's been doing with his bat. I can't get up for it right now. Can't get up for the letdown at this point because, we've seen it before. Like, hey, I'm reading everything about like this guy could be the real deal, and that's exciting. But I really just have to pump the brakes. We've done this before with different rookies and different situations. So I'm just, okay, that's great. Just stay healthy. Then just stay healthy and keep doing what you're doing, and then we'll see what you've got in the Cactus League. We'll see what happens, and I'm just going to try to trust, the new executives, the front office, but I can't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't get too amped right now because I've been burned. We've all been burned way too many times.
Well, getting excited about a guy that's doing well in fall ball is probably not good for one's health, right? Let's not get overly excited about a guy that's cleaning up against other guys in fall ball and empty stadiums and that kind of thing. Now, what I'd rather have him doing this than performing poorly, right? This is good. It's not a bad thing. I don't mean to piss all over his Cheerios here, but I'm with you. Let him get the at-bats. Let him get the time. Let's not rush this along. There's no need to move him along right now unless you're planning on putting him in a different position outside of shortstop. You've got a shortstop seemingly right now, but that'll be another story for another day. There's no reason to move him along too fast because I fear that's what they did with Andrew Vaughn. It was the can't miss guy. Let's get him moved through quickly. Even though that went against seemingly what Rick
Garrett
and
Crochet. Can you make an argument for Garrett
it went
Crochet?
against seemingly what they've always said, which was let's let them succeed and fail in the minors, X amount of at-bats, X amount of appearances, all this other stuff that we always heard. But with Andrew Vaughn, it seemed to be like, well, let's keep him. Come on. This guy's too good. We can't keep him down here type of thing. Stick to your plan. Whatever your plan is, stick to it, right? Let it be the same way for everybody. Let them go through whatever your vision is for this organization. Let that all play out and then bring him along.
Especially because 2024, I do not think there's a pressing need. This isn't a, hey, he could be the missing piece. Like, we're here, we're just at the beginning. Let's get him going. Like, no, don't need to rush it for 2024. I don't think so. I know Anderson's open to moving to second. That's a big one. That's a biggie to still, whenever that drops this offseason, that there's a lot of content to go through with that. That's a big decision coming. So of course, Gregor talks about finding pitching, and you got a lot of arms out there. I mean, Aaron Nola, 31 years old, like he's got the experience. Blake Snell, Sonny Gray, Jordan Montgomery, who's pitching tonight. That guy's going to make some money. He's going to make some money. Unfortunately, it's not going to be with the White Sox, but boy, he would look good in the rotation.
Maybe we could pay him in Comiskey cash.
Gosh.
He'd like to pay you this amount of money in regular dollars. But let me tell you what we can do with Comiskey cash.
That would be a sweetened deal. How about it? And I would love if Getz was straight-faced and said that. Like, it was a very handsome deal. We made it very attractive. The amount of Comiskey cash that he was going to take home, his kids and family and relatives would have eaten free at the ballpark for years. So if you're going to turn your nose up to that much Comiskey cash, sorry, maybe the South Side's not for you. And just really just sold it that way.
They could have lived like sultans right there. And it's only the Russov's way, and then whatever it was.
And then someone tells Getz, you know what? We don't even offer Comiskey cash anymore. That's not even a thing. That went away a long time ago.
What do the Royals do? Is it Royals?
What are the Royals
rubles
do?
Or something?
What do the Royals do? There's got to be some sort of Kaufman cash or something. Something's going on that we'll just do that. What else we got? Zach Greinke. Hey, we could bring in Zach Greinke.
Oh boy, Zach Greinke, Salvador Perez. Yes, get that battery back in action. How long can Zach Greinke actually pitch for? Can he just go? He's a little bit odd. Can he just go away? I'm ready for Zach Greinke to be away. Just do whatever you would normally do with your life, sir.
I think he is just, he lulls you to sleep. The times he has pitched against the White Sox this past year, I mean, he just, his off speed stuff, he's mixing things up. I mean, he was really keeping the Sox off balance, which is not a difficult thing to do at all. But that's where he's at. I mean, that all max effort stuff, that's long gone. He is just hitting spots, mixing things up, a couple of emphases here and there. Cunning and guile, man. And, you bring Salvi in, okay? You bring Greinke in. You got yourself a ball club right now.
Oh, look out now. Look out. Look out, Tigers. We got your number. Yeah. We're going to be leapfrogging you anytime soon.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of there's some arms out there. I mean, Dallas Keuchel, Vince Vasquez.
Oh my gosh. Dallas Keuchel and Velasquez. Oh,
yeah, Vince.
Mercy.
You got Jake Odorizzi. There's some arms out there that I think if the Sox are going to invest some money, try to get some pitchers, man. Try to get some arms. They're not obviously. Jerry told us that no one in the White Sox organization is going after Ohtani. That's not going to happen. Nor should anybody think that was ever going to happen, ever. I mean, if you want to get a bunch of listens, though, this is what you do. If you got a podcast, if you've got a Sox podcast, this is what you do. You put in your title, Ohtani to the Sox ? White Sox ? That thing will blow up. And it's just complete.
Why aren't we doing that then?
Because it's all just on the surface.
We've got enough fans. We don't need any more. We don't need any Johnny come latelys.
No,
we got our true blue listeners and fans. God bless every single one of them.
Not here. So Gregor, after keeping Anderson, go after pitching. More Moncada ? He didn't really pick a side, but it's more of, hey, this guy's owed a lot of money. He finished the year strong, but Brian Ramos, Scott Gregor wrote, prospect on the rise, should be ready to step in at third base at some point in 2024. So,
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Duly noted.
Look for that.
I see.
Look for that, Moncada. Watch out, man.
Well, that Moncada is going to spend several weeks on the IR, right? So I'm sure we'll see somebody at third base eventually.
That's got to happen. Yeah. It's not going to be Jake Berger. He
It's
gone.
not. Oh, that's right. He
No,
was
he gone.
unceremoniously traded away by the executive that's no longer here. Which again goes back to why did you let those guys stay there and make decisions
Thank you.
for your ball club for the
Yep.
future that aren't currently here? Stupid,
Wow.
stupid, stupid.
Just so dumb. Pass on Clevenger, Scott Greger says, and then spend smart. So that's
You know what? I will
that-
say this about Clevenger. Put all the controversial part about it aside. When he was available, I can't say that he was. Yeah, I think we got out of him what I would expect out of a fifth starter. Would you say that's correct?
I had a laundry list of stuff in the last episode that I missed on with our predictions, but I wasn't expecting much at all
Mm.
from Mike Clevenger based on, what I heard from, Padres folks and, the injury stuff and still not feeling right. And then of course, all the offseason stuff. I just thought it was going to be too much for him. I mean, he was one of our more reliable starters for a while there, especially after Giolito left. So, he says he wants to come back. Could there be some other team that's like, what, we really would like to pay you some serious money. So, Scott Greger says no, but you're going to need arms. Sox are going to need arms. Grifol definitely talked highly of Clevenger down the line there.
Mm-hmm.
Spending smart, that's not really been the White Sox way. How they've been throwing money around to, man, how much they spent on the bullpen and then that Lurie Garcia contract and of course there's been so many others that really confused. Just what are you guys doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing with this? Because you don't have a lot of it to spend, and how you're spending it, it's odd to me. So yeah, I guess that's hey, might as well start. We got some new folks in charge. Start spending smart. So we'll see.
Yeah, that will be exciting, Nick, to see if there is any kind of difference in the way that this new front office will approach things in this offseason and how they decide to adjudicate dollars and where they decide they want to be aggressive and how they put this roster together. Right? It's probably going to be a mixture of all types of things, whether it's bringing up guys from the minors and acquiring guys and via the trade. Right? So it will be interesting whether it's done well or properly or will result in wins next year. That'll remain to be seen, but it'll be interesting to see a different vision and a way to construct this roster come this winter.
So everybody, we're talking anniversaries. Obviously, with the playoffs going on, it's like, well, on this date in White Sox history, the Sox did this, the Sox did that, and there hasn't been a lot of material, because there hasn't been a lot of appearances, even though the Sox have been around for, 500 years. There's just not a lot to go off of. But on this date here, October 15th, as we record. Game 4 of the 2005 ALCS, and then October 16th, Game 5, the clincher of the ALCS. So that series, man. Konerko was the MVP. You had what a pitching performance. I don't think you're ever going to see that.
You're not going to.
You're never going to see what happened during that ALCS in 2005. No, you didn't even need the bullpen. It was unreal. I was at a bar in Bridgeport for game 1 of the ALCS. It was called Puffers at the time. It was like 33rd and Halstead, which is now Mitchell's Tap on Halstead at the same location, Halstead and 33rd. And that was game 1, and that was the loss. And I just had that sick feeling, even though all the excitement, I just felt like, that was a fun run. That was fun. And I'm really, I'm so sad that was my initial reaction, but that was my initial reaction. And then they just rattled it off. And it was, Uh, so fun. You and I watched
Mhm.
several of those games together, I believe, during that series. And, probably next episode, we'll even be able to talk a little 2005 World Series, because that's what we do every time it comes around.
That's what happens. Yeah, that series was great. I remember it was Anderson for the Angels that really ripped our heart out in the first game of that series. And I, like you, was thinking that it was over after game one. I remember the build up to game one in that series was how tired the Angels would be because they had just finished off with the Yankees. I think it was extra innings or something like that, and they were flying, from LA to Chicago in the middle of the night to play a game the next day. I don't remember all the circumstances. I just remember it was like, oh, the Angels are going to be exhausted. They're never going to be able to compete. The Sox are well rested. They just swept away the Red Sox. All this, we had all the momentum and playing at home, and then here comes the Angels. They're exhausted, and they found a way to steal game one. So, um, you know, can we go back? Can we just go back to a multiverse where that can just repeat itself on end? That would be great. But yeah, memories like the corner
Yeah.
of my mind. Misty
Yeah.
watercolored memories.
You'll see a lot of those highlights this coming week on social media. Sox clinching, heading to the World Series. It's unfortunate. We want to move on, right? We want a new team to rally around and create some new championship memories, but we don't. So you and I were at a good age where, man, we were able to live through that and have really crystal clear memories of where you were, who you were with, and that your team, that in sharing it with multiple generations, and they're kind of experiencing it for the first time because it hasn't happened,
Yeah.
in so many years. It's a magical moment that absolutely has to be revisited. And again, since we don't have a lot of these in our White Sox history, you pay attention to it. So before we head out, of course, as promised, the Pedro Grifol quote of the week. This was from just shortly after he was hired in November 2022. My job is going to be, and the staff's job is going to be, to make sure that the energy is high every night and we are prepared to win ball games. It starts in spring training, the level of intensity and to our practices, cage work, the details. Attacking margins are going to be extremely critical in developing the culture and chemistry of this ball club. And that was your Pedro Grifol quote of the week, hopefully sponsored by Super Rope in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
If we can just get if we can get our communication together.
We'll work
So
on
the
that
culture and chemistry, I zero in on that. That did not go right.
process. It's a several year process, Nick.
And it was addressed. Those things were
We'll
addressed.
address it. We'll flush it.
Yeah. So that, again, as I mentioned, along with the players and the actual talent, the Sox are trying to figure out, well, who are we? What's our identity? And that's sometimes a bigger task than just filling out the roster. It's just, can we get the chemistry right here? And maybe that's why Pedro's saying, I got to have Salvi. I got to have Salvi Perez. He's gonna be the one that's just gonna unify everything.
Yeah, when I heard cage, I just immediately thought like a cage match, like in wrestling. Like that would be, maybe that's what they should do. Just get a WWE Royal Rumble style cage match, and just work out their issues, and then all of a sudden, culture will be fantastic.
Sometimes that, when you just absolutely get real and you just gotta, throw some fists, a couple of body slams, a few suplexes,
A couple eye gouges, back rakes.
Somebody gets DDT'd. Hey,
Yeah.
you get DDT'd, you probably, you'll have a different way of looking at things, perhaps.
Big boot, the big leg.
Just a big boot off the rope. Clear the cobwebs out a bit. You might be able to just have a little bit more synergy. We're just, we're linked a little bit more.
Yeah.
I ate some boot, and hey, I think we're able to play better as a team. I don't know. We'll see.
I'd pay for that. I would
Well, that
love
would
to
be
see
so.
that.
That should be what Sox Fest is. It's like we have
Yeah.
no Q&A. There's no merchandise. We just have a
Mhm.
ring. And just watch all the players just bash their
I
brains
think
in.
that'd be fun for fans too. I think we just, just rattle it. Here comes you and I coming
Yeah,
out of the
yeah,
back and just running into the ring, just Ultimate Warrior style, just going at it with other Sox podcasts. That would be super.
yeah. Tim Anderson, watch out. Keep that jaw. Keep that hand up. Watch your jaw. You never know. Someone might swing and catch you on that jaw. Yeah, I mean, it's again, no announcement of Sox Fest, but that's an idea. Just a thought. Just a thought, Pat.
That's what we're here for, ideas.
Well, we'll try to do this all over again next week. What do you say, Pat?
Yeah, we'll try. Let's do it. Let's do
Sounds
it to
good.
it. I'm here for it.
Appreciate all of the folks jumping in on the comments. Thank you so much for passing this podcast along. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate that. Join us on Sunday nights. Try to do it every Sunday evening, 9:15. The audio version available absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We're on Twitter, X, at Good Guys TV. We've got a Facebook fan page. For Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.